All right, all right. It is a little early today. I was having some internet issues with Scott's page. Hopefully, it's a little better here with mine. And if you hear any background noise right now, Eric, sounds like the little guy is coming up the stairs right now to get ready for the day. So hopefully, not too much upsetness. But I'm Nick Kendall, joined by Erick Trickel, talking about Wednesday, and we got some news this morning to get into as everybody gets in here. I better get Facebook joined as well. Dylan's used to me not being ready until 7:40. So there he is. Good to see Dylan in the house. And we got Facebook coming in slowly but surely here. 1 and 2. Good morning, everybody. MBLE test
Mblex.
prep here to party.
Mblex. It's Mblex.
Mblex.
Yes.
Okay. Mblex. What does that mean?
Not sure. I've meant to ask him at the meet and greet, but it's Mblex. Carl said that on one show, and he said that was correct, and then he was talking about it at the meet and greet, and it stuck with me. I remember this time. Mblex.
Mblex. Here to party. Broncos have been partying 5 weeks in a row. Good to see you. Dylan, you're fine. Good to see you. Flying Anger Pig in the house, too, with one of our super members as well. Good to see you. Tan over on YouTube. Good morning. I hope it's good news with Surtain. And it's a massage and bodywork licensing exam. If it's a massage and bodywork there, maybe we should have seen each other and talked more at the meet and greet. I got this. I'm still kind of dealing with the air mattress ramifications that I was on for 3 weeks. So, and how good to see you. Ernie Mays in the house. And yeah, probably a quicker show today. My wife's not feeling the best. So I got to help with everything with the kid wise. She's done most of it. Typically she gets him in on Mondays and Wednesdays while I'm still waiting for my big boy job to start. But it is Wednesday morning, and we do have some Ian Rappaport news today. I didn't see it anywhere else, Eric, so if you want to accredit it elsewhere, you can. But Ian Rappaport put out there this morning that the Broncos news on Patrick Surtain, while it is not exactly what we wanted, I guess it is slightly better than we heard before, Eric. So original news coming out, the Broncos had hoped it would only be a 1 to 2 week injury, grade 1 pectoral strain. It sounds like it's kind of in between a grade 1 and a grade 2, actually. And while PS2 is not heading to the injured reserve list, the expectation is for him to be out 3 games. So I think it's almost unfortunate the Broncos bye week is landing when it does. I almost wonder if the bye week was flipped, you see him on the injured reserve and he out for 4 weeks instead. But you have the bye week in there. So unfortunately, maybe that's working against Denver in this case with PS2, but they're going to keep him active and hope for the best. We are all hoping that that's the case. There's not a retroactive injured reserve that you can do for players. So like, let's say he misses 2 games and then they place him on the injured reserve. It starts then on that 3rd game. So we kind of saw that with Dre Greenlaw to start the season as well. They took a little bit to get him on the IR. Oops. Well, no retroactive IR, but sounds like it's going to be 3 weeks for Surtain, which is unfortunate. It really is a kick to the, reproductive organs to lose that, not be there for that Kansas City game in all likelihood, but not heading off to the injured reserve list.
Yeah, it seems like that if the rules were what they were, where it was 4 weeks instead of 4 games, then he would probably go on injured reserve. But now that they switched it to 4 games, the bye week no longer counts for injured reserve. So that seems to be what the case is here. And also talking with somebody last night, it sounded like that there is a 50-50 chance he's back for that Kansas City Chiefs game, and he may only miss 2 games, but it seems right there on that 50-50, depends on how recovery goes because of the injury, but it's definitely good news. Whereas, Monday, the talk and the chatter kind of seemed that it was probably going to be 4 or 5 weeks based on with what they thought was going on, but it wasn't as bad of an injury as they initially thought. And that's always good news. The only one that we're still waiting out on is Nate Adkins. Want to bring that up with the trade deadline approaching and Denver having been rumored to be calling around on tight ends and wide receivers, according to Adam Schefter. And with them putting in a claim on Brendan Bates and Ben Sims, we're going to see what's going to happen with that deadline. The trade deadline is next Tuesday. And Nate Adkins, all we know with his injury is that it's a significant knee injury. That's the only wording that I've seen used around on it, and wasn't placed on injured reserve either. So maybe he's another one of those where it's maybe 2 or 3 weeks or 2 or 3 games that he might miss. So not quite injured reserve because they needed to open that roster spot for Drake Greenlaw yesterday to come off the reserve suspended list. And instead of putting one of those guys on injured reserve, they cut Sam Ellinger. So maybe that's a positive sign for Nate Adkins as well when it comes to his knee injury.
Sorry, my internet is completely dipping in and out there. Eric, we may need to have Dylan hop in today because also I just got a text from my wife saying help. I guess she has a stomach illness, not to share too much here. So good to see Dylan in here. I'm probably going to hop out here in a second, Eric. Denver Luke coming in. Good to see you, Denver Luke. He says, morning, boys, sign Taysom Hill. And now I'm getting a phone call. So I actually do think that, unfortunately, I have to leave. Sorry to put you last minute here and change things up, but parent and dad duty calls. So
yeah.
We'll see you guys
Family
Monday.
Stuff comes first.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that, Eric. And thank you, Dylan. But yeah, it's I think she maybe breakfast came up. So appreciate you guys. Have a good one. We'll talk later.
Yeah. All right. So as Nick was saying, Denver Luke comes in with a $2 super chat saying, morning, boys, sign Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill is still under contract with the Saints, sorry. Right? Dylan? I'm
right.
misremembering.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I mean, Denver could always trade for him, and that is always a possibility as Denver is looking around, and we know that Sean Payton has this love for Taysom Hill, for lack of a better way to put it. By technicality, he has 3 years left on his deal, but it voids after this year. It's an automatic void. That happens in, I believe, February. And if I remember correctly, he has an insane cap number for this year. It's like $15-16 million of salary cap space that Taysom Hill's taking up on that Saints. And he would take up a lot of dead cap as well because of that contract voiding. So Saints seem to be wanting to move on from him. Makes sense. But the Saints can't get themselves out of cap hell, and I can't see the Broncos being able to make it work financially to bring him on with the way his salary cap is right now. And he's been dealing with injuries so much over the last 2 years.
Yeah, and the kind of compensation you have to give up too. I mean, maybe not too much, but again, you're going to be eating a big amount of that cap hit, which the Broncos absolutely cannot do, especially for an older quarterback / tight end / special teamer, which how effective is he going to be going forward? Not sure I've even seen a big play from him yet this year. Obviously, the Saints aren't that good so far, but yeah, I haven't really seen anything explosive from him this year. So not really a direction I'm looking to go in for the Broncos personally.
Yeah, I think that I'm not expecting a big splash at tight end for the Broncos. If they do make a move at it, they are, as I said, there are rumors that are going around that they were calling around. They've been linked with TJ Hawkinson. They've been linked with David Njoku with those contracts. I don't see a way they can make it work. The Broncos don't have a lot of viable ways to pick up a lot of or create a lot of salary cap space this year. The biggest way is trading Alex Singleton, and I doubt that's going to happen. You can't cut him because his contract guaranteed since he was on the roster for week 1. So not sure how you can make it work for that. So I'm expecting like a number 3 tight end type trade, some smaller name, maybe a veteran who's losing snap counts, maybe a guy who is younger that is still on a rookie contract that hasn't been panning out so well, like a Luke Schoonmaker in Dallas. He's losing snap counts to Brevin Spann-Ford, who's stepped up as a blocker. And Luke Schoonmaker, he's been all right as a blocker, but hasn't really stepped up in either one a whole lot. Or what's his name? The other tight end for the Vikings, Josh Oliver. Maybe the Giants want to move on from Danielle Bellinger. Like, I expect a trade like that, not a big name for it. And then Adam Schefter also, he was talking about trading for a wide receiver, and that comes in with somebody coming over on Twitch, Bully Bryce. We don't get a lot of comments in here from Twitch, so it's always got to highlight one of those. Have we traded for Shaheed yet? Rashid Shaheed from the Saints, he's one of those guys that many are expecting to be traded. as the Saints are working on a contract extension with Chris Olave that they're expected to get done sometime before the trade deadline. We'll see if it actually happens. So Rashid Shaheed, he'd be a nice get for the Broncos because he can help out with the return game, especially with Marvin Mims with in concussion protocol. He can help bring some added explosiveness to the offense. I just think that with what the Saints are probably asking for him, especially as they switch over to Tyler Shuck as their quarterback with Spencer Rattler being benched, I'm not sure that it makes sense for Denver to go get Shaheed. And especially with the fact that he's on that final year of his deal, he's going to be wanting a big contract. And you are basically renting him for the final 8-9 games of the season.
Yeah, like you mentioned, it would be a good explosive option to have in this offense. And, we've kind of lacked explosive plays in certain aspects, and we need more consistency from wide receivers overall. Last game is kind of an anomaly for this season. We had multiple wide receivers stepping up, especially Troy Franklin, who diced him up pretty good. We'll see if he could have that consistency against Houston, who is a very man-heavy team, and Franklin has struggled against man. But we'll see how that goes. But Shaheed, yeah, the price as well, just including like a new contract, assuming you sign him to a new contract, and just the compensation. I've heard second round, third round pick. I'm not sure I'm willing to give that up at this stage.
Yeah, you mentioned one thing that I found interesting with the Houston Texans and their coverage rates. They have been a man coverage team for the past few years. This year, they're running zone coverage at over 80% of the time. Like, I was really surprised when I saw that. And you mentioned Troy Franklin stepping up against the Cowboys. Well, they led the league in man usage at almost 90%. So Troy Franklin, he has 8 catches for 40 yards against man coverage, and all the rest have come against zone. With the Texans being more zone coverage this year, maybe the door is open for Troy Franklin to have another good game for this. He just has a way of finding the open spot in zone coverage. And on top of that, one thing that I noticed that he does a lot is if he finds a soft spot in the zone, he will sit in it. And that's not the big thing here. He will sit in that zone even if it cuts into another receiver's route, which is great because you want to find that soft spot in the zone. You want to make yourself a target. It's just funny that he does that because you don't see a lot of receivers do that. That's typically more of the tight end move to do. Something that Travis Kelce has done for years. And I actually kind of like seeing that from Troy Franklin. We have Tyler Brooks coming in asking, is PS2 back for the Chiefs game or Commanders? Just joining the stream. If covered, go Broncos. Nick and I did talk about this before Nick had to leave, but it does sound like that there's a good possibility that Surtain, pretty much guaranteed Surtain's going to miss the next 2 games for sure. I was talking with somebody last night, and they kind of made it seem like it was 50-50 for the Chiefs game. But he should be back for the Commanders game at the very least, putting him out 4 weeks, including the bye, not 4 games. And with injured reserve now being by game and not by week, it kind of hurts the plans. And if it was by week, I'm pretty sure he'd be placed on injured reserve. But since it's by game, they don't want to place him on it and have him be out for 5 weeks.
Yeah, and it's a shame because of how well he's played this season, and now you're gonna have to have guys like Chris Abrams-Drain, like Zadeh Barron step up in his absence. And for the Houston game, I'm not as worried just because of how terrible the Texans line is, and I think the pass rush is really going to affect this upcoming game. But I mean, against the Chiefs, if you don't have Patrick Surtain, then it could be a little bit of a rough ride there with Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, and Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce. That's a tough matchup to go in without your best member there in the secondary.
Yeah, and with the Texans game coming up, I'm trying to figure out the best way to put this. I'm not, it's not a good thing that Patrick Surtain is out. It's never a good thing when your star reigning defensive player of the year is out. But I would expect that this pushes the Broncos defense into more of zone instead of man, kind of what we saw against the Cowboys in the second half. Saw a little bit more zone. And CJ Stroud has been like the 14th out of 48 best quarterback in EPA per pass against man coverage, whereas he's been like 28th out of 57 qualifying quarterbacks in EPA per zone. and he actually has a negative EPA per pass against zone coverage. So it might, again, not a benefit, but the change that it's going to bring, that it most likely brings for the Broncos secondary, could actually be somewhat beneficial against CJ Stroud with where he struggled at this season. And even his career, he's always done better against man coverage than he has zone. And the last time the Broncos played the Texans, he went off against their man coverage. So being more zone might be a benefit for this team again in this matchup. But of course, you always want your reigning defensive player of the year out there. And the hope would be that even if he was playing Vance Joseph would realize this and use more zone coverage against CJ Stroud anyways, even with Surtain out there on it. And again, always losing your star corner is never a good thing. DeAndre Weatherspoon saying, I'm looking for consistency with this offense, and the carryover from the Cowboys game and the play calling and execution was great, as am I. My biggest fear with this offense is that this game was a mirage. And what I mean by that is that this was a game where they looked so good and as good as they did because of how bad and how beat up the Cowboys defense is. I don't think that's fully the case, because when I went back and watched over this game, well, early on, there was so many miscues from the Dallas Cowboys defense on the RJ Harvey run. There was a couple miscues, but that was well executed and well blocked. On the big J.K. Dobbins 21-yard run, I think is what it was. That was more attributed to the miscues on the Dallas Cowboys defense. One of the big plays to Troy Franklin, that was a miscue. So there were multiple miscues in the first half, but the second half, the defense seemed to not have those miscues, and Denver still executed so well that it gives me belief that this offense has put the pieces together, have figured out ways to make things work, and that should carry over, and that it wasn't just how bad the Cowboys defense is. Of course, it's a big difference when you're going from a bottom 2 defense in the NFL. I think that they're the worst defense in the NFL in the Dallas Cowboys, to one of the best defenses in the NFL in the Houston Texans. So it's going to be far more challenging for them. And it has to have been a case where they have figured some stuff out to execute better and to go out there and play better and have better and more consistent play calling and just everything being better offensively against the Texans, because they're going to need it.
Absolutely. And you talk about this Texans defense that has Will Anderson Jr. and Daniel Hunter and Derek Stingley, their top trio there. And that's a formidable trio to go up against. Nothing like what the Cowboys have. I don't know if I can name one single pass rusher off the top of my head besides Donovan Ezeraku, who's a rookie, who actually played decently well. But beyond that, the Cowboys have a horrid defense. And you saw that the Broncos took advantage of that, as they should. But against the Texans, it might be the first to 13 points wins this game, just with how awful their offense is and how shaky the Broncos offense has been thus far against this high level defense. So I'm hoping for a more consistent game. I don't need to see them drop 44 points, although that would be nice. I think realistically you're looking anywhere between 13 to 20 points, to be honest.
Yeah, we have Nick coming in saying, sorry to run, guys. Natalie is definitely sick. Poor gal. Mills says hi. Well, hi to Mills, and hopefully Natalie gets to feeling better. And also Vic Fangio would warn the Dallas game could be a false positive for the Denver offense. Thank you, Nick. I was trying to remember what the phrase was that Vic Fangio used. I thought it was mirage, but I couldn't remember for sure. It was false positive, and that is kind of what I was getting at with that. David Yanka saying, Eric, I won't say the Broncos are clicking until I see it on a regular basis. Let's see what our defense does against the Texans defense. That's kind of where I'm at. There's a lot of positives to take away from the Cowboys defense, as I was getting at what they were doing in the second half, especially when the Cowboys weren't having as major miscues as they were in the first half. They seemed to settle down. They seemed to figure things out. Could have been a difference in play calling from the defensive coordinator. Name escapes me at the moment. Whatever it was, Dallas Cowboys were doing better defensively internally. And so they weren't having those big miscues. They weren't creating those openings for the Broncos. The Broncos are finding those openings and still executing at a high level. That gives me hope that this offense has figured it out and has starting to put everything together. It's unfortunate it's happening as late in the season it is, but it's a positive sign for them, and we just now need to see it against a great defense. Because if they can go out there and do not even all of what they did against the Cowboys, if they can go out there and do 50 to 75% of what they did against the Cowboys, then that is a very positive sign for this Broncos offense of showing that consistency of putting things together. It's at the right time too, with us now entering the back nine of the season and some tough games coming up. I mean, not only the Houston Texans defense, but the Kansas City Chiefs, their offense is kind of surging and their defense is starting to figure things out. The Commanders with Jaden Daniels will likely be back for them in that game. Then you have, the other Chargers game to close out the season, the Packers game, and the Packers are playing at such a high level. So you still have a lot of tough games coming ahead, and we're going to need the offense to be a little bit more consistent in this one going forward. And Todd Ossendorf coming and saying, hello, Broncos country. Hello, Todd. Good morning to you. Hope you are having a fine Wednesday morning. Kristen Bailey, drummer, coming and saying, glad it's not a huge concern with Surtain. Definitely. I mean, it's always a positive note when you're not losing a star defender for multiple games. Obviously it sucks, but it's not long term. It's not the rest of the season. It's not most of what's remaining of the season. So Surtain being out 2-3 weeks or 2 or 3 games, maybe 4 weeks with the bye week there, that's much better than 6, 7, 8 weeks with only 9 games left and the playoffs coming in. Todd also saying 44 points means the offense is working no matter the opponent. Not necessarily. There's such things as Nick came in and pointed out, Vic Fangio, false positives. There's those mirage games. And what that is, we saw the 28 points against the Bengals and how well they looked. And then look what they did, followed that up with. Like when they played a little bit of a tougher defense, they stunk it up for 3 quarters. So it can be a bit problematic. 44 points doesn't always mean the offense is working. That said, as I was saying, what they did in the second half is a good sign that the offense is working, because the Broncos offense was getting those wins without the miscues like they were in the first half with a lot of those big explosive plays early on. And they were able to just put the pieces together and work their way down the field and have everything click against the Cowboys defense, instead, again, of taking advantage of those miscues.
Yeah, and especially they cut down on offensive penalties. I believe there were still about 3 off the top of my head. It was more defensive, towards Riley Moss specifically, unfortunately for him. They seem to have it out for him a little bit there, the referees. But yeah, offensively, less miscues in terms of procedural stuff. So that's going to help out quite a bit. And like you mentioned, you're not going to be dropping 44 every week, especially obviously the Texans aren't a great team as a whole, but their defense has been lights out for the most part and kept them in games kind of reminiscent of the Broncos of the past however many years. The defense playing absolutely lights out and the offense letting them down. But so, yeah, I'm not expecting a high score this week. And, consistency is something we want to see going out through the rest of the season. I don't need to see 44 points every week, but I want to see, hey, let's keep the penalties down. Let's get some consistency from a receiver not named Cortland Sutton, who really didn't show up much this past week. But hopefully Troy Franklin can continue to play well. Maybe you see more Pat Bryant after that amazing touchdown catch he got. Just consistency overall. It's something to obviously it's hard to build off of 44 points, but in terms of consistency, we want to build on that and keep seeing that going forward.
Yeah, and Bully Bryce coming in talking about Okonkwo of the Titans and Njoku of the Browns and Hawkinson of the Vikings. Which one is the best fit and which one is most likely Broncos trade for? Thanks, guys. If the Browns were willing to eat the dead money, I think Njoku would be the most realistic option. I think Hawkinson would be the best fit, but I think his contract is a lot harder to work around. The biggest issue with David Njoku's contract is the amount of dead money it creates for the Browns. It's not so much that can the Broncos afford him. It's will the Browns be willing to eat it when they're in a not so good cap space next year, which I can't believe we're saying about the Browns. It always seemed like for so long, they always had 50, 60 million in salary cap space. And next year they're projected to have like 7 or 8 million right now, which with the actual cap number that comes out, they'll probably sit around 9, 10 million. And all of that, if they trade David Njoku, all of that would be eaten up by future dead money. So I can't see the Browns being willing to move on from Njoku without the other team eating a lot of that contract And that's where it creates issues for the Broncos. They don't have the salary cap space available to eat a lot of that dead money. I think if at all, I don't think they can actually eat any of it because I think Njoku's contract would eat pretty much all the available cap space they have left. So they could obviously free up a little bit of cap space. They can free up about $2 million if they move on from Jaquan McMillan and Jaleel McLaughlin. That frees up about $2 million, gives them a little bit more wiggle room. But you still have to have salary cap space, not only for the rest of the season, but you still want to be able to carry over a little bit, roll it over into the next season. So I don't think Njoku or Hockenson are really viable. Okonkwo, I think, is probably the most viable option of those three, but I also think that he is the worst fit of those three. He is a poor man's Evan Ingram type. He is that slot tight end that doesn't bring much as a blocker, and I wouldn't be trading for that. Unless Evan Ingram got hurt, knock on wood, and against the Texans, I wouldn't be going after Okonkwo for this offense.
No, me neither. And if you're going to get a tight end at this point that's more of a pass catcher, you might as well just trade for a wide receiver because this team needs a blocking tight end. And if you can get at least a depth in that area. And Njoku, I've always been a fan of. Hockenson as well. And as much as I like Njoku, like you mentioned, Brown's going to be eating a lot of dead money for that, and they're probably going to want to pass that on to Denver. Also, I think they probably want to keep a couple weapons around for whoever they end up drafting at quarterback this year, because let's be honest, Dylan Gabriel is not stopping you from taking a quarterback this year. And as for Hockenson, yeah, I mean, he'd be a great fit. Does it work out? I really, really doubt it unless the Broncos are willing to eat some money.
Yeah, and Njoku still has one of those contracts where it's technically 5 years left, but it's only a 1 year with 4 years that are void years that it voids on February 10th, actually. So Denver would have to be quick about working out a new contract with him anyways if they brought him in. So I just don't see any of those as viable options. Todd Oswald was saying the pass interference on the Broncos side end, I think it was Troutman. It was Troutman. When he was setting a pick and not trying to run a route was just a bad job. Yeah, that was awful. The fall off of Adam Troutman has been steep and quick. I mean, he came in and his first year in Denver wasn't too bad. He actually looked like a very viable number 2 tight end, just was forced to be more than that because of injuries. And he just wasn't with that. Last year, we saw a little bit more rough play, but he still seemed pretty viable as that number 2, number 3 tight end. His play this year, it's been borderline unrosterable with how bad it's been. And just the consistent mistakes over and over again. He's had some big plays, sure, and has had, I think, 2 pretty solid games this year. But 2 out of 8 games, like for a guy that you're now looking at to be your number 2 tight end, and it's just rough. There's a reason why when Nate Atkins came back, Adam Troutman's snap count severely plummeted. Denver has to find something better than Adam Troutman and keep him in that 3rd tight end role. The less snaps he gets, the less chances he has to hurt the offense with stupid penalties or stupid plays, bad blocking, whatever the case may be. And that pick was just poorly designed. And the fact that he was trying to argue against it, like you made it very obvious. You checked into the defender. Like it was not anything anywhere remotely of a well-ran pick route, or even trying to show that you're actually running a route and creating that contact instead of just basically setting up the block and creating that contact.
Yeah, I'd like to see him create more contact on screens like he's supposed to, but he's kind of failed in that area as well. You mentioned he's had a pretty steep fall off, and that's kind of hard to do when you're a middling player anyway. But he somehow found out how to do that. So kind of annoying there. But I'm also seeing some more options pop up in the chat. Nick brings up Daniel Bellinger from the Giants, and I see Pat Freiermuth. Is that a realistic option for the Broncos?
I wish. So Pat Freiermuth has been losing snap counts week after week. It has become the Johnny Smith and Darnell Washington duo over in Pittsburgh. And he is he is a blocking tight end for them. And they've been using 6 and 7 line sets, those big jumbo packages, more often than putting Pat Freiermuth out there. But his contract, he just signed a contract extension either last summer or this summer. I can't remember exactly which. And so that creates a lot of dead money for him. And for this year, as I click over for it, he still counts for, it would be, let's see, without doing the math in my head, he'd probably still have about 8 million, 7 million unpaid salary this year that the Broncos would have to pick up. And the Broncos sit at about 5.6 million in salary cap space. So that would be something where they'd have to create a lot of it. And then the Steelers would have to eat the rest, all that dead money for him, which would be about 20-ish million split over the rest of the season and next season. So I don't think it's financially viable for the Broncos because I don't see how they can create that cap space. Especially with Patrick Surtain out, I don't think trading Jaquan McMillan isn't even an option for them anymore. I think it was a very small option for them even prior to that, unless some team came and blew them away. So they don't have another way of creating a lot of cap space again without trading Alex Singleton. That is the only way they can create a lot of cap space. That is that one piece that that they should move on from, but they won't. That is the only way for them to create enough cap space to make in a big splash signing like Pat Freiermuth.
Yeah, who's going to take Alex Singleton at this point? I'm not sure there's a team who would. Maybe the Cowboys. They're injured all over, but I seriously doubt it. It sucks because he's obviously well liked in that locker room and in the front office, what have you, but and has played a little better these past couple of weeks, but still not to the level where I'm happy with him being out there. And thankfully, Greenlaw will be back, but that means less snaps for Sternad. Yeah, I mean, you kill two birds with one stone there. Get rid of some money and get some better play on the field, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem like that's the route the Broncos want to go.
Yeah, and the Broncos, they are looking for tight end help, so much so they brought in Mercedes Lewis for a workout, which I wouldn't be opposed to. I'm very curious about where he is as a blocker at 41 years old, but if he can come in and just be enough of a threat as a receiver, I'm not talking about a guy who's going to get, a bunch of catches every single game or even a bunch of targets. Just enough of a threat as a receiver to still provide some questions for the defense as to what the Broncos are doing and not have them be a predictable offense. I'd be fine with it at this point. Like, just they got to do something to improve the blocking from the tight end position. Nate Atkins was doing a good job for there, minus the Giants game. He was actually pretty great outside of that game. And losing him is definitely a major loss because it does mean more Adam Troutman. Evan Ingram isn't a blocker. And then what do you have left? You have Patrick Murtaugh and Caleb Lohner. Patrick Murtaugh, if I remember correctly, he is the one that has that international player exemption on the practice squad that enables the Broncos to keep 17 players on the practice squad. And Caleb Lohner, who didn't look anywhere close to being ready for the NFL in the preseason. Lucas Kroll, he just had foot surgery on Monday or Tuesday. And there's a lot of chatter that's probably going to have him miss most of the rest of the season, if not the rest of the season. Might be back for the playoffs. They got to figure out something for it. With that, let's see if there's anything else in here. Prod by Sunny Demand. You think all the Chris Evans-Drain talk could be Sean Brown throwing the Texans off and they start Barron? Very possible, but it seems like they have a very clear role for Barron in this defense, and it's working. He's actually been playing really well in that role, and it's not a role that Chris Abrams-Drain can fill. It's not a role that really anyone else on this defense can fill. I don't even think JL Skinner can really fill it at that well, because it's a hybrid role. So you still got to have that coverage ability, and JL Skinner just doesn't have that. So I don't think so. I think that they will probably roll with Chris Abrams-Drain with it. Only thing I wish with him likely being the start, we haven't heard for sure. I do think it would be him with Barron being in that role and being more of that slot corner. I wish that Vance Joseph would have Chris Abrams-Drain be a little bit more aware of the sticks. There were 2 or 3 game plays against the Dallas Cowboys where it was second or third down, and he was playing 5 or 6 yards beyond the sticks. And it allowed the Cowboys, George Pickens primarily, to just catch an underneath pass and go and pick up the first down. So that's the only thing I wish with Chris Abrams-Drain. Play a little bit closer to the 6, but that might be a little bit tough to do with his size. You don't want to expose him too much in the running game as well. He's been a decent enough tackler, but his size could lead to some issues there.
Yeah, and this is kind of proof of why you drafted Barron in the first place. Obviously, it was a kind of a best player available type pick, but you want to keep a strength. And we've seen flashes of Chris Abrams drain the past last season, and then he played this past week, but you don't really know if he's going to be a great player or even, a serviceable backup. So that's why you get a Barron who played very well against tight end last week, Jake Ferguson, I believe. And he didn't have any catches. So that was pretty good. And, I see a comment here from Gordon saying, what now? I think instead of wide receivers or tight end, trade for a corner. That's just not viable. This is why you draft a Jahdae Barron. You have to kind of throw him into the fire, and not a 1-to-1 comparison, but Patrick Surtain didn't really get to play until the injury to Ronald Darby his rookie year. Who knows if he would have played very much his rookie year. So this is a chance to test that first round pick and prove, hey, this is why we got this guy. So going for outside help at corner, absolutely not. And especially with how good the rest of this defense is, I think you can survive, we'll call it, without Patrick Surtain for 3 or so weeks, or 3 or so games, I should say. But no, I wouldn't be looking to trade for a corner.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those positions where the Broncos are fine. And even though Patrick Surtain's going to miss probably, 2 or 3 games, still not trading for it. You roll with Chris Abrams, you roll with Jahdae Barron, you roll with Riley Moss and Jaquan McMillan. All of them have been doing a fine job. Obviously, the penalties with Riley Moss are upsetting, especially with 3 or 4 of them shouldn't have been penalties. Man, that is so frustrating. He doesn't get the benefit of the doubt with the refs, so anything just gets it. The first defensive pass interference against the Cowboys should have been more defensive holding, still a penalty, still a bad play by him. The second one was absurd. Like, yeah, by technicality, it was a penalty, but pass interference and holding, you will find one of those on just about 95% of plays in the NFL. How much does it impact the play? How severe is it? How egregious is it? That second one, what he did, he had his hand inside the thing, inside this part of the jersey of it. That is technically pass interference. It is impeding their ability to make the catch because you have a hold of them that you could be using to drag down. It did not affect the outcome of the play because Riley Moss still made a great play to bat the ball away. It wasn't because he used that to throw CeeDee Lamb to the ground or pull him down out of the catch point. He didn't use it. He just still made a great play on the ball. That is one of those plays where you just let them play. Then against the Dallas Cowboys, that late one he had against there, that was, again, pass interference. He holds the receiver's arm down and keeping him from being able to go up. Then he rotates, and the receiver is now grabbing him and pulling him away from being able to make the catch. That should have been offensive pass interference as well and offsetting penalties. So Riley Moss isn't getting the benefit of the doubt with these. He's not getting that wiggle room that you like to see. It's like Garrett Bowles for the longest time there with holds, even though a lot of those holds were snatch technique and the refs just don't know the difference. And it was a shame then, and it's a shame now that when players just get a reputation, they don't get the benefit of the doubt. Kareem Jackson with those hits to the head and the targeting penalties and all that stuff like that. He wasn't getting benefit of the doubt. It always sucks when that happens, especially when they get as ticky-tacky or as weak of calls as the pass interference ones have been against Riley Moss. We have Todd Ossendorf coming in asking, as soon as I can find it, what do we think about the rumors linking the Broncos to Olave? It's a tough one because of the injuries that Olave has been dealing with over the last couple of years. I'm not entirely sure the Saints are really shopping him. I think they're just listening to calls and trying to push Rashid Shaheed a little bit more. As word has been is that they are working very hard to get a contract extension done with Chris Olave, but prior to the trade deadline next Tuesday. We'll see if it happens. I personally doubt it does, but I also doubt that he gets traded.
Yeah, with Olave, I think it's more just speculation, making the connection of Sean Payton and, his ties back to the Saints. He drafted him. I really don't see it happening, to be honest. Like I said, I think they want to keep some pieces in the Saints, even though obviously they want to try and get their cap number down. I just don't really see it happening. And for what price are they willing to part with him?
Yeah. 78 Leadhead, big time commenter after the show. Always see you coming in and supporting us afterwards in the comment section. Great to see you in here when we're live. He's saying, is Rashid Shaheed even a solid number 2? Serious question. Don't know much about him. Yeah, he is. He's an explosive playmaker that you like to get the ball. If I recall, he is almost the opposite of Troy Franklin. If I remember right, I might be misremembering this, and I can definitely take a second here after I pass it off to double check my numbers here. If I remember correctly, Rashid Shaheed shows up more against man coverage than he does zone, whereas Troy Franklin, again, most of his numbers have come against zone coverage, with 8 catches for 40 yards coming against man coverage. So yeah, he could definitely be a good fit for them, and just add some more explosiveness and some more reliability in the pass catchers from man coverage outside of Cortland Sutton. I just don't think it is. I think that Rashid Shaheed's going to end up in New England personally, but I wouldn't mind it for Denver. It just would come down to the cost, and with what's going out there with it, I don't see it happening.
No, it does seem like his price is going to be pretty high, and like you mentioned, he is a very explosive playmaker, and seeing that number 22 is a little weird for me on a wide receiver, but because I don't expect him to be flying across the field like that, but he has great speed and explosiveness, something that the Broncos sometimes have with Troy Franklin and sometimes have with Marvin Mims, but it's been pretty inconsistent this year. And he is definitely a solid number 2 for the Saints, especially with what they have there, the often injured Olave and then Vele, who they traded for and haven't really given much gotten much use out of. So sucks for them, good for us. We got a 4th round pick out of it, so I'm not going to complain about it. But yeah, having Shaheed in this offense would be great, but I don't think the price is right. And I think more aggressive teams like Eric mentioned, New England, a team that has been playing very well, but could still use an explosive weapon on that offense. That seems like a realistic landing spot for Shaheed.
Yeah, especially with the AFC seeming wide open right now. The Broncos are 3rd. The Colts seem to have a pretty good hold on the number, I believe right now, the number 1 seed. With what they're doing offensively, man, it is something absolutely special for them. And then you have the New England Patriots, who they're kind of doing what the Broncos did last year. They're doing well they're beating those bad teams, but they're struggling a little bit more against the good teams. And then you have the Buffalo Bills, who that defense was awful, and they just lost their best defender. The Kansas City Chiefs, they're starting to put things together, but they're still showing cracks in the armor there that's very exploitable for them. So the AFC really seems like it's pretty wide open right now. So maybe going and getting a guy like Shaheed could be the difference for this Broncos and help put them into that and cement them, I guess would be the better way to put it, in the upper echelon of the AFC for this season. There was a comment here that I wanted to grab. Todd Osdorf says, you guys don't think that some of the calls against Moss have been ticky-tacky calls? I do. And yeah, I do, but not in the sense that they're, maybe not pass interference. I think a lot of these calls should be pass interference, minus the first one against the Cowboys that should have been defensive holding, not pass interference. As he grabs CeeDee Lamb when Lamb was going back to his break before the ball was thrown. That's holding, not pass interference. But hey, that's beside the point. I think they've been ticky-tacky in the fact that there were situations where the flag didn't need to be thrown, or situations where in the case of the Cowboys or the Giants pass interference late in the game, a flag should have also been thrown on the receiver for it as well. The absolute crappy part with the one against the Giants was they called it in the end zone when it wasn't. It was on the 3-yard line when Riley Moss committed his defensive pass interference. The second one against the Cowboys, that one was ticky-tacky in the aspect of it didn't affect the play. Riley Moss still made a great play. It was a situation of just let them play. You don't need to call things as minor of a pass interference as that one was.
Yeah, and when it comes to offsetting pass interference, the offense is always going to get the benefit of the doubt, it seems. So, unfortunately, even if the receiver is fighting back in a way, they're not going to get called for it, unfortunately. And hopefully, and I do have the Broncos making the playoffs. They do seem to be a little more lax when it comes to pass interference, depending on the crew. When it comes playoff time, they let them fight a little more. So hopefully that changes come playoff time. But yeah, Riley is definitely picked on a little bit, but it's not all the ref's fault. He does grab here and there, and they're going to call him on it. That's just how the NFL game works, especially as a more offensive league.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because defenders already have it tough as it is with all these rules that protect the offensive players. And if they're going to be calling the defensive pass interference like they are, it just really stinks. Not sure what Todd was responding to here. He says Broncos online actually ranks number 1-2 on pass blocking efficiency. They are ranked number 1, and they are ranked number 1 by almost 2 points. They're at 91.5 pass blocking efficiency, and the next team is at 89.3. Ironically, the team at number 3 is the Houston Texans, 88.1. But it's an offensive line stat, but it also is a quarterback stat. CJ Stroud helps out that offensive line a lot. I still think that is a very viable way to slow down this offense with this, especially with this pass rush, especially with the work that Vance Joseph has done to get Jonathan Cooper and Nick Benito on their one-on-ones outside. I saw a Seth Walder, who does analytics for ESPN. He did his pretty regularly. He puts out the pass block win rate and chip rate chart. And Nick Benito and Jonathan Cooper both are low on that double team, low chip rate, but very high in the pass block win rate. So they're in the top left quadrant for it. And, part of that is, teams just aren't throwing the chips at them a whole lot. But the reason why they're not getting a lot of double teams is because of what Vance Joseph is doing with the simulated pressures up front. He's forcing the one-on-ones. He's forcing the offensive line to collapse inside because he's always consistently showing those linebackers mugging the A gap. And, that's what, going back to the Bengals game here, that's what led to some of those 4-on-1s with Zach Allen was just schemed up by Vance Joseph with what he was showing pre-snap. And we're seeing it still consistently. Teams are being a little bit more aware of it. I would like to see Vance Joseph start throwing those linebackers a little bit more at the A gap and punish teams for it, because we're in against the Giants. We saw them a little bit not buy it and still spread out and leave that opening in the middle. And the Broncos took advantage of that a little bit. The Cowboys did it a couple times, though they didn't get the benefits of it with the sack as much as they did against the Giants. So I'd like to see that a little bit more, but Vance Joseph has done a phenomenal job with the work up front with his way of getting Nick Benito and Jonathan Cooper in one-on-ones. And those tackles for the Texans, both of them are not great, especially their right tackle, whose name escapes me at the moment. So that is something that I would like to see them work. Even though they're ranked number 3 pass blocking efficiency, I don't see it when I watch over the Houston Texans.
No, and having a weapon on defense like Nick Benito who can get off the snap in a hurry, that's going to factor in quite a bit in this game, especially with you mentioned the tackles. I can't even name them. That's how bad they are. So Nick Benito should have a game. Jonathan Cooper should be able to collapse the pocket. And just this defensive line in general has been so good this season. I mean, Malcolm Roach has been great to have back. You got John Franklin Myers, Zach Allen in the middle, DJ Jones even. I mean, they've been really, really good this season, and it's really makes the rest of this defense just that much better, especially with how good the secondary is. It goes hand in hand. So hopefully they can continue that success, and I think they're going to have a pretty successful game here against the Houston Texans offensive line, which is just abysmal.
Yeah, I had to double check that right tackle is Arianta Ursary, the rookie out of Minnesota this year. He's given up 17 pressures already this season. Oh, no, sorry. Titus Howard is their right tackle. Arianta Ursary is the left tackle. So the left tackle is the one that's been awful. I was thinking of Ursary. 17 pressures. And the big area that he's had weak spot at, playing that against those speed and explosive rushers around it. And I've talked about this before. I've written about this a lot. Did a film piece on it that talked about it a little bit too. When you watch Nick Benito and how offensive tackles are playing, they're setting heavy to the outside. That means their balance is typically is on the outside, and they're setting a little bit more depth than they usually do. For when handling Nick Benito, just because of how dangerous he is, and he's still winning so often about pressing the arch and exploiting around it. What is so scary to me with Nick Benito, and I've been a big doubter of him, and it's always come as the run game, but I finally accepted the fact that he's never going to be a good run defender. he'll be a opportunistic run defender, whereas when the blocking benefits him, he's going to make a play. But outside of that, you can basically count it on as 11 on 10. What is scary with Nick Bonito as a pass rusher is if he can add an inside counter move. And the one that comes to mind, DeMarcus Ware's counter spin that he had. If he can add that, Nick Bonito could absolutely be high teen sacks every single year, because you have that speed explosiveness around the arch that tackles are so threatened by. Then if you add that counter to it, when they set heavy outside and you can counter back inside and win quickly, like, it can be so dangerous. And if they start to correct for that, well, then guess what? You still have that speed explosiveness around the arch. He just doesn't have that inside counter move, which sucks, because he also had, the first sack that they had on the Dallas Cowboys, it came from him working inside, but it came from a chip from Ryan Flournoy, of the Dallas Cowboys receiver, where he came down, he pushed him into that B gap, where Tyler Guyton, kind of lunged into contact, and Bonito was just able to explode through it and get the hit on Prescott, force him to hold the ball, and then unfortunately he didn't come down with the sack, but he broke away and John Franklin Myers came down with the sack. So I would love to see Nick Bonito add a inside counter move and just be even more threatening as a pass rusher.
Absolutely. Let's get some work in the offseason with DeMarcus Ware. I think that would be pretty good for him, even though he's already a very good, very great pass rusher.
Mr. Rusho 5 saying Wilson from the Jets, send a player plus a pick.
I wish.
Garrett Wilson just signed a contract extension, so that's not happening because of the amount of dead money the Jets would have to eat for that. Because if I remember correctly, it was a pretty sizable bonus on it too, and that bonus money is what is. Let me see if I can't pull it up here. That bonus money is what gives them that dead money. So yeah, if they trade him, they would basically be eating about $50 million in dead cap space split up between this year and next year. Based off of that, let's see. Just double checking here. Yeah, it'd be about $50 million in dead cap money if split between the 2 years if they trade him. Jets aren't doing that. They made the investment in him with the intent of keeping Garrett Wilson, and whatever they end up doing at quarterback, he's going to be there for them. Likely when they take a quarterback, probably with the first overall pick in this year's draft, they want a weapon there in place for him.
Yeah, I mean, he would have been a great addition to this offense, and I see a name in the chat that I really wanted during the draft, Emeka Buka. Man, he is killing it right now. I didn't think the Buccaneers were going to take him right before Denver. He was my pick for them there. I know a lot of people saw him and said, oh, he would just be a number 2 receiver. You need more than one wide receiver, and the Broncos have proven that, I think, pretty well. And I see Todd saying, would you talking to someone else in the chat saying, would you take him over Barron considering we just had PS2 injured? Yeah, I think I would have, to be honest. I liked Ibuka that much, and there were some corners there in the second round that I think not on the same level, obviously, but I think could have played very well in this Broncos defense. I believe it's Jacob Parrish. Did he go in the second round?
Third round, I believe.
Third round. So he could have been had there as well, but obviously, different scenarios. You don't know what's going to happen. But the Ibuka would have been great for this offense.
Yeah. And what, Parrish went to the Buccaneers too, right?
Did he? It was the Bucs or the Colts. I can't remember.
I can't remember exactly who. I thought it was the Buccaneers. Yeah, it was the Buccaneers. So if we could trade the first and third round picks with the Buccaneers, I'd be okay with that. And I'm a big Pat Bryant fan. I still think that there is a lot more to his career coming up. And even Sean Payton's talked about it. They want to get the ball to him a little bit more down the stretch of the season. And there's been a lot of missed opportunities. There was quite a few plays against the Eagles that were missed opportunities. The Jets, that were some missed opportunities. Obviously, it doesn't help when you go and drop a pass like he did against the Giants. Yeah, he had to go up and get it, but it's still one of those plays where you got to go make and help or get more trust from your quarterback to go make those plays. Had that huge touchdown catch against the Cowboys, that was a beautiful throw from Bo Nix, one of the better throws that we've seen from Bo Nix this season. And I actually like what he did on his other catch a little bit more. But yeah, we're still seeing a lot out of him. But Emeka Egbuka and Jacob Parrish over Jade Barron and Pat Bryant, I would make that trade personally, because you can use Jacob Parrish in the same role that you're using Jade Barron in. And Egbuka is just, man, he would be so great in this offense. I always hate talking about, well, if we drafted this player, then based off of what they're doing with their current team, just because it's always hard to project that. Because you don't know, because schemes are different. But I think that the Broncos scheme, with what they asked that wide receiver to do, Egbuka was an outstanding fit for it. And so I think that that is one of those where you can translate it over a little bit. Other players from this year, like Harold Fannin Jr., I don't think is as easy to project, just because Evan Ingram is in his way for that role. He's not being used as a blocker there in Cleveland. That's still David Njoku. He's that slot tight end, and that's Evan Ingram's role. So I don't know if Harold Fannin Jr. would get the same opportunities in Denver to replicate what he's doing in Cleveland that he obviously is doing in Cleveland.
Yeah, like we just need a blocking tight end at this point. Get a couple catches here and there, but primarily a blocker.
Yeah. But I think that's going to have to do it for us, unless there's anything else you want to talk about real quick this morning, Dylan.
Looking through the chat, looks like we've kind of picked through everything thus far.
Yeah, so quick matter of business here. We will be live Friday night, even though it's Halloween. I will most likely be in my costume for the show. I will be doing the show with Chad. He's going to be joining me as Lance has other stuff going on, as well as it being Halloween and spending time with the family. Fortunately for me, by the time we go out trick-or-treating, it's right after the show's over. So I got to be in my costume and probably cut it out a little bit early. You guys get to see me in the makeup that I'm going to be wearing for my costume and all that stuff like that. It'll be interesting. But on top of that is we are going an hour earlier. Instead of the 7 p.m. Mountain Time, it will be back to the 6 p.m. Mountain Time, just so I can get out of here in time to go trick-or-treating with the family. That is, so just a quick matters of business there. So 6 p.m. Mountain Time on this Friday for the Halloween show with me in makeup. Unfortunately, I won't have all of my costume with me. I don't think Chad would be very happy with having lightsabers on it, even though maybe I can use that as my extra lighting. Having my lightsabers on me, but you'll see me in my makeup for it and my costume. I'm excited for it. I always like Halloween shows, but I think that's going to do it for us on this morning. Ozark asking, what are you wearing? The family and I, we do family costumes. A couple years ago, we went as Mario, Luigi, and Princess Peach. Last year, we went as a group of astronauts. This year, we are going as a group of Sith, Star Wars. Not what the kiddo wanted, but what the kiddo wanted, we couldn't do because they don't have costumes in what she wanted that fit me. They don't have adult Minecraft costumes, apparently. Which is a shame. I was totally wanting to go as an Enderman.
That would have been awesome.
Guess you're going to be Darth Maul? No, just kind of a custom one. Yeah, with one of the best things my wife ever got me, besides the Millennium Falcon that's sitting above me, is the custom lightsabers that I have, which I can't show on screen because they're too big to actually fit, even if I'm standing up against the back there. So going to be using those. Maybe I can, have them on set and use them as extra lighting. They are white. So anyways, that's going to have to do it for us. Todd saying, go to Ferrandi this year. You'll have fun. It's a good event and worth the trip to Anchorage. The issue is around that time of year, the wife is pretty busy, and that is typically, my little bit of downtime before things get ramped up for the draft. So we'll see. It's something that the wife and I have talked about, but it it's just a tough time for us to do that, especially with making the travel up to it with, possible weather during that time of the year. Always stinks and always makes traveling, especially through the mountain passes, to be annoying. And David T saying, hello again, came in late. Sorry. Anyways, Drain should be okay in PS2 position. Yeah. I'm confident in Chris Evans Drain. We saw a lot of what he could do last year in limited playing time. We'll see. Hopefully it carries over. But thank you, David, for joining us. Unfortunately, it is late for us, and we do got to be getting out of here. I want to say thank you guys for joining us on this fine Wednesday morning. But before we get out of here, we do have some matters of business here. You guys, welcome to all of our members over on YouTube. If you guys are not yet a member over on YouTube, you can become one over at youtube.com/@MileHuddle, where you guys get access to exclusive content like Kelberman's Korner and Broncos Book Club that we currently have going on, as well as some stuff that we have in the works that might not be coming until after the season. If you guys are able to do so, super chats on YouTube and stars on Facebook, they help support the channel and are dedicated to us. That helps us keep the lights on, help keeping us doing this every single day. If you guys are unable to do so financially, one way you guys can help us out that only takes a matter of time is subscribe, like, and share. Those are 3 ways that you can help us with the algorithms, especially on YouTube and Facebook, that are ever changing and ever being frustrating for us on our end. You guys can also take some time to go over to Spotify or Apple Podcasts, either right now listening to this show or after the fact, and leave a 5-star review for a chance to win some gear, not swag. I hate saying swag, every single month. You guys can also follow us on Instagram at MileHuddle with an underscore between mile and high and huddle. And you go to able to do so, especially, it's holiday season, buying gifts. If family members of yours are also fans of MileHuddle, you can go to mhhmerch.com to get your gear on, not swag. Again, I hate saying swag, and buy some gifts like hats, like the one I have on, which I still got to get around to getting a Broncos for breakfast one. We have shirts, coffee mugs, all sorts of stuff over there on mhhmerch.com. You guys can follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/MileHuddlePod and facebook.com/MileHuddle, where you guys can get access to all of our written content, as well as join the wonderful Facebook community that we have built up over the last 10 or 11, 12 years, however long it's been. You can follow us on Twitter at MileHuddle, at the Broncos for Breakfast Twitter account that I can never remember what it is.
BFB_pod.
There we go. Thank you, Dylan. And of course, at the MHH Pod, this is one of the many MileHuddle podcasts that come to you nightly and 2 times in the morning. We want to say thank you guys for joining us and being a part of this. Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. But before we get out of here, any final words, Dylan?
Yeah, I guess I'll just throw out my Halloween costume since we brought it up. I'm gonna go as Mr. Fantastic this year. Don't think I can match the sexy that is Pedro Pascal, but I'm sure gonna try.
I was really pleased with how good that movie was for a while, and I'm looking forward to watching it again. But yeah, hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week. I will see you guys on Friday. Hope you guys stay safe. Don't drink and drive, even though it's the weekend and should be early in the morning wherever you're at. And as Nick always says, even though he's not here, choose kindness and compassion. And of course, go Broncos.